In the grand theater of human interaction, where every gesture carries weight and every word holds consequence, there exists a skill so potent that it transforms its wielder into something both fascinating and terrifying. This skill, which Niccolò Machiavelli understood centuries ago when he penned his observations on power and human nature, is the ability to remain completely unreadable to those around you. It is a capability that strikes fear into the hearts of colleagues, confounds adversaries, and commands respect from all who encounter it. The unreadable individual moves through the world like a master chess player whose next move remains perpetually shrouded in mystery. They speak without revealing their true intentions, act without telegraphing their plans, and maintain an expression that gives away nothing of their inner calculations. This is not mere stoicism or emotional suppression, but rather a sophisticated form of psychological warfare that operates on the principle that information asymmetry equals power. Consider the executive who sits in board meetings, listening intently as others reveal their positions, concerns, and strategies through their words, body language, and emotional reactions. While colleagues lean forward eagerly when interested, furrow their brows when concerned, or shift uncomfortably when threatened, this individual remains a study in controlled neutrality. Their face betrays nothing. Their posture suggests neither agreement nor disagreement. Their questions are precisely calibrated to extract information while revealing none of their own thinking. This executive understands what Machiavelli knew instinctively, that in any negotiation, relationship, or power struggle, the person who reveals less holds more cards. When others cannot predict your reactions, they cannot manipulate your responses. When they cannot read your emotions, they cannot exploit your weaknesses. When they cannot anticipate your moves, they cannot counter your strategy effectively. The power of unreadability extends far beyond the corporate boardroom or political arena. In personal relationships, the individual who masters this skill becomes simultaneously more attractive and more formidable. People are naturally drawn to mystery, yet they also fear what they cannot understand or control. The unreadable person leverages this fundamental aspect of human psychology to maintain the upper hand in virtually every interaction. This skill manifests itself in numerous ways throughout daily life. In conversations, the unreadable individual listens more than they speak, and, when they do speak, their words are carefully chosen to advance their agenda while revealing minimal information about their true thoughts or feelings. They ask probing questions that seem innocent but are designed to gather intelligence about others' motivations, fears, and desires. They respond to emotional appeals with measured consideration rather than immediate reaction, creating space between stimulus and response that allows them to maintain control. The unreadable person has mastered the art of the poker face not just in games of chance, but in the far more complex game of human relations. They understand that every micro-expression, every shift in tone, every change in posture communicates information that others can use against them. Therefore, they have trained themselves to become living enigmas, presenting a carefully curated version of themselves to the world while keeping their true selves hidden behind layers of strategic ambiguity. This creates a profound psychological effect on those around them. Humans are pattern recognition machines, constantly trying to predict and understand the behavior of others to feel safe and in control. When confronted with someone who consistently defies their attempts at categorization and prediction, most people experience a deep sense of unease. They cannot tell if this person likes or dislikes them, agrees or disagrees with them, poses a threat or offers an opportunity. The discomfort this creates is palpable. In meetings, others may find themselves unconsciously seeking approval or reaction from the unreadable individual, even when that person holds no formal authority over them. They may repeat themselves or over-explain their positions, hoping to elicit some readable response. They may become more animated or more subdued, unconsciously adjusting their energy to try to match or complement what they perceive as the unreadable person's mood, despite having no clear indication of what that mood actually is. This dynamic grants the unreadable individual tremendous influence without them having to assert it directly. Others begin to orbit around them, seeking cues and validation that never come. Colleagues start including them in conversations and decisions not because they have demanded inclusion, but because their very inscrutability suggests depth and importance. The assumption becomes that someone who reveals so little must have much to hide, and what they have to hide must be valuable. Machiavelli understood this principle when he wrote about the importance of maintaining mystique as a leader. He observed that rulers who were too familiar, too open, or too predictable quickly lost the respect and fear necessary to maintain authority. The effective prince, he argued, must remain somewhat unknowable to his subjects, creating a sense of awe and uncertainty that prevents others from taking liberties or assuming they understand his true intentions. In modern contexts, this translates into professional environments where the unreadable individual becomes the subject of constant speculation and analysis. Co-workers discuss their interactions with this person endlessly, trying to decode their meaning and predict their next moves. What do you think they meant when they said that? Becomes a common refrain. I can never tell what they're thinking becomes both a complaint and, grudgingly, a form of admiration. The unreadable person's power grows through this very speculation. Each conversation about them, each attempt to analyze their behavior, each moment others spend trying to figure them out is attention and mental energy diverted from other pursuits and directed toward them. They become the central figure in many narratives without having to demand that position or fight for it. This skill proves particularly valuable in negotiations, where information asymmetry can mean the difference between a favorable outcome and a devastating loss. While others reveal their priorities through their enthusiasm, their concerns through their objections, and their limits through their reactions, the unreadable negotiator maintains perfect strategic ambiguity. They listen to offers without indicating whether they find them attractive or insulting. They ask for concessions without revealing how important those concessions are to their position. They make counteroffers without showing whether they expect acceptance or rejection. This approach keeps their negotiating partners constantly off balance, never quite sure whether they are close to a deal or far from one, whether they are dealing with someone who desperately wants what they offer or someone who could easily walk away. This uncertainty typically works in favor of the unreadable party, as human nature tends toward offering more concessions to someone whose position remains unclear than to someone whose needs and limitations are obvious. The psychological impact of unreadability extends into leadership contexts, where the ability to remain inscrutable can dramatically amplify one's authority and influence. Team members begin to project their own interpretations onto their leader's silence or neutral expressions, often assuming greater depth and strategic thinking than may actually exist. The absence of clear signals creates space for others to fill in the blanks, and they typically fill them in ways that enhance rather than diminish the leader's perceived capabilities. However, the power of being unreadable comes with significant costs and risks that must be carefully managed. The same inscrutability that creates influence and commands respect can also generate isolation and mistrust. People may be drawn to mystery initially, but, over time, the lack of genuine connection and authentic emotional exchange can lead to resentment and alienation. Colleagues may begin to view the unreadable individual as manipulative or inauthentic, even when their behavior serves legitimate strategic purposes. The skill also requires enormous emotional discipline and self-control. Maintaining an unreadable facade means suppressing natural reactions, controlling spontaneous expressions, and constantly monitoring one's own behavior for signs that might reveal too much. This level of self-regulation can be emotionally exhausting and may lead to a sense of disconnection from one's own authentic feelings and responses. Furthermore, being consistently unreadable can interfere with the formation of genuine relationships and trust. While it may provide tactical advantages in competitive or adversarial situations, it can be counterproductive in contexts that require collaboration, teamwork, or emotional connection. The very qualities that make someone formidable in negotiation or conflict may make them ineffective in situations that require vulnerability, empathy, or genuine partnership. The truly sophisticated practitioner of unreadability understands that this skill must be deployed selectively and strategically. Like any powerful tool, its effectiveness depends on knowing when to use it and when to set it aside. There are times when calculated revelation serves one's interests better than continued mystery, moments when showing vulnerability creates more influence than maintaining inscrutability, and situations where authentic emotional connection trumps strategic advantage. The art lies in developing the ability to modulate one's readability like a dimmer switch rather than an on-off button. In high-stakes business negotiations, one might maintain near-complete inscrutability. In team-building exercises or relationship-building contexts, one might deliberately allow more authentic emotions and reactions to show through. The key is maintaining conscious control over this process rather than being unconsciously transparent or unconsciously opaque. As we delve deeper into understanding this formidable skill, we begin to see how it operates not just as a defensive mechanism, but as an active tool for gathering intelligence and maintaining strategic advantage. The unreadable individual doesn't merely conceal their own thoughts and feelings, they create conditions that cause others to reveal far more than they intended. This intelligence-gathering aspect of unreadability represents perhaps its most valuable component. When people cannot read your reactions, they often compensate by providing more information, over-explaining their positions, or offering additional details in an attempt to gauge your response. The silence and neutral expression of the unreadable person becomes a vacuum that others feel compelled to fill with their thoughts, concerns, preferences, and strategic considerations. In business contexts, this dynamic can provide enormous competitive advantages. During client presentations, while colleagues nod enthusiastically or frown with concern in response to various proposals, the unreadable individual maintains steady attention without revealing their judgment. This often causes the presenting party to elaborate further, address concerns that haven't been raised, or sweeten offers preemptively in an attempt to generate some positive response. The technique works because it exploits fundamental aspects of human social psychology. Most people are uncomfortable with ambiguity and silence in social interactions. They interpret neutral expressions as potentially negative and assume that if someone isn't showing enthusiasm, they must be harboring doubts or objections. This assumption leads them to provide additional information, make unprompted concessions, or reveal their own uncertainties in an attempt to address perceived concerns that may not actually exist. The unreadable person becomes a master of strategic silence, understanding that the absence of response often generates more information than direct questioning could achieve. By simply maintaining attention without judgment, they create conditions where others volunteer insights into their thinking, reveal their priorities, and expose their vulnerabilities without being asked. This approach proves particularly effective in management and leadership situations. When team members bring problems or proposals to someone who maintains careful inscrutability, they often end up talking themselves through to solutions or revealing more about their thinking than they initially intended. The leader who responds to "What do you think about this approach?" with thoughtful silence followed by "Tell me more about your reasoning" often learns far more than the leader who immediately shares their own opinion. The intelligence gathered through these methods compounds over time, creating an increasingly detailed map of the personalities, motivations, and strategic thinking of everyone in one's professional and personal orbit. The unreadable individual begins to understand the triggers, fears, ambitions, and decision-making patterns of their colleagues, competitors, and collaborators in ways that others cannot reciprocate. This information asymmetry becomes a form of social capital that can be deployed in numerous ways. Understanding someone's core motivations allows for more effective persuasion. Recognizing someone's fears enables better prediction of their reactions. Knowing someone's ambitions provides insight into potential alliances or conflicts. The unreadable person accumulates this knowledge while revealing little about their own psychological landscape, creating a profound strategic advantage. The skill also provides protection against manipulation attempts by others. When someone cannot read your reactions, they cannot calibrate their influence tactics to your responses. They cannot tell whether their emotional appeals are working, whether their logical arguments are persuasive, or whether their implied threats are having the desired effect. This forces them to either give up their manipulation attempts or escalate them to levels that may reveal their true intentions and make their tactics obvious to others. In romantic and personal relationships, unreadability creates a different but equally powerful dynamic. It generates what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, where the other person receives occasional positive signals but cannot predict when they will come or what triggers them. This unpredictability can create an almost addictive quality in the relationship, where the other person becomes increasingly invested in trying to earn clear positive responses. However, this dynamic must be managed carefully in personal relationships to avoid creating genuine harm or emotional damage. While strategic inscrutability can create attraction and maintain interest, it can also generate anxiety, insecurity, and resentment if taken too far or applied inappropriately. The individual who masters unreadability in personal contexts must develop sophisticated emotional intelligence to know when mystery serves the relationship and when genuine vulnerability and openness are required. The power of unreadability also extends into crisis management and conflict resolution situations. When emotions are running high and tensions are escalating, the person who can maintain perfect composure and inscrutability often becomes the natural mediator or decision maker. Others may be shouting, expressing frustration, or showing clear agitation, but the unreadable individual's calm presence suggests wisdom, control, and objectivity. This perception of objectivity, whether accurate or not, often leads others to defer to the unreadable person's judgment or to seek their opinion on contentious matters. They are seen as being above the fray, unswayed by emotion, and therefore more likely to make rational decisions. This reputation for level-headedness can be incredibly valuable in professional settings where leadership opportunities often go to those perceived as having the best judgment and emotional control. The technique also proves valuable in competitive situations where psychological warfare plays a significant role. In poker, this principle is obvious and explicitly acknowledged. In business, politics, or other competitive arenas, the same principles apply but are rarely discussed openly. The individual who can maintain perfect emotional control while others reveal their stress, excitement, or concern through their expressions and body language holds a significant advantage. Professional poker players spend years developing the ability to maintain neutral expressions regardless of the strength of their cards or their emotional state. This same skill, when applied to business negotiations, personnel decisions, or strategic planning meetings, can be equally valuable. The executive who maintains the same expression whether discussing quarterly successes or quarterly failures keeps competitors and colleagues guessing about the true state of their company and their own confidence levels. As the unreadable individual develops and refines these abilities, they often discover that the skill creates its own momentum. Success in using inscrutability leads to greater confidence, which makes it easier to maintain composure in challenging situations. This increased composure generates more respect and deference from others, which reinforces the effectiveness of the approach and encourages its continued use. The reputation for being unreadable begins to precede the individual, creating expectations and assumptions that work in their favor even before direct interaction begins. People approach them with greater caution and respect, knowing they are unlikely to get easy reads on this person's thoughts or intentions. This preemptive psychological advantage can be decisive in many situations. However, as this reputation grows, so too does the scrutiny and attention directed toward the unreadable individual. Others begin to study their behavior more carefully, looking for tells or patterns that might give them insight into this person's thinking. They may form alliances with the specific goal of gathering intelligence about the unreadable person's true positions and strategies. This escalation requires the unreadable individual to continuously refine and evolve their techniques. What worked effectively when dealing with people who weren't specifically trying to read them may prove inadequate when facing deliberate attempts at psychological analysis. The skill must mature from basic emotional control to sophisticated deception detection and counterintelligence awareness. The truly advanced practitioner learns to feed false information through their behavior, deliberately creating misleading impressions when it serves their strategic purposes. They might allow carefully calculated glimpses of apparent emotion or reaction, not because they have lost control, but because they want to direct others' attention in particular directions or encourage specific assumptions about their thinking. This level of sophistication transforms unreadability from a defensive skill into an active tool for psychological manipulation and strategic misdirection. The individual who reaches this level of mastery can not only conceal their true thoughts and feelings but can also implant false impressions and direct others' interpretations of their behavior in ways that serve their larger objectives. At this advanced level, the unreadable person begins to operate like a skilled intelligence agent, gathering information while disseminating disinformation, building networks of contacts while maintaining operational security, and advancing their agenda while keeping their true objectives hidden. They understand that in the complex game of human relations, information is power, and the ability to control the flow of information, both incoming and outgoing, provides enormous strategic advantages. The mastery of unreadability represents one of the most sophisticated forms of social intelligence, requiring not just emotional control but also deep understanding of human psychology, strategic thinking, and long-term planning. Those who achieve this mastery often find that it opens doors to opportunities and influence that would otherwise remain closed, while providing protection against many of the interpersonal dangers and manipulations that ensnare those who wear their hearts on their sleeves. Yet with this power comes responsibility and the need for wisdom in its application. The skills that make someone formidable in competitive contexts can damage or destroy the relationships and communities that give life meaning. The challenge for the master of unreadability is learning when to deploy these abilities and when to set them aside in service of deeper values and more important goals. As we transition into examining the practical applications and nuanced deployment of this skill, we begin to see how true masters navigate the delicate balance between strategic advantage and authentic human connection. The most successful practitioners are not those who remain perpetually unreadable, but those who understand when inscrutability serves their purposes and when genuine transparency and vulnerability will better advance their long-term interests. The practical mastery of unreadability requires developing what might be called strategic authenticity, the ability to be genuinely open and vulnerable when it serves larger purposes while maintaining perfect control, and inscrutability when the situation demands it. This sophisticated approach recognizes that the most powerful individuals are not those who never show weakness or uncertainty, but those who choose consciously when and to whom they reveal their authentic selves. In professional settings, this might mean maintaining complete inscrutability during budget negotiations while showing genuine enthusiasm during team-building exercises. It could involve concealing strategic concerns during board presentations while openly sharing personal challenges with trusted mentors. The key lies in making these choices deliberately rather than falling into patterns of unconscious revelation or unconscious concealment. This selective deployment of unreadability requires sophisticated social intelligence and emotional awareness. The practitioner must be able to read others effectively enough to understand when mystery will be beneficial and when it will be counterproductive. They must recognize when their inscrutability is creating the desired effect of respect and caution versus when it is generating suspicion and hostility. The most effective practitioners develop a repertoire of partial revelations, carefully chosen glimpses of authentic emotion or thought that serve specific strategic purposes. They might show controlled frustration to signal the importance of an issue without revealing their full position. They might display measured enthusiasm to encourage others while maintaining negotiating leverage. These calculated displays of emotion often prove more effective than complete inscrutability because they give others just enough information to feel they understand the situation while still maintaining strategic ambiguity about the most important elements. In relationship contexts, strategic authenticity becomes even more important. No romantic relationship can survive complete emotional inscrutability, yet partners who reveal everything indiscriminately often lose the mystery and respect that initially attracted their partner. The skilled individual learns to maintain certain areas of personal autonomy and private reflection while being genuinely open about emotions and experiences that strengthen the relationship bond. This approach might involve sharing feelings about shared experiences while maintaining privacy about certain personal ambitions or concerns. It could mean being transparent about day-to-day emotional responses while keeping longer-term strategic thinking private. The goal is to provide enough emotional connection and vulnerability to maintain intimacy while preserving enough personal mystery to sustain ongoing interest and respect. The application of unreadability in parenting contexts requires particular sensitivity and wisdom. Children need to be able to read their parents' emotions to feel secure and to learn appropriate social behavior. However, parents who are completely transparent about their fears, frustrations, and uncertainties can create anxiety and insecurity in their children. The skilled parent learns to maintain calm composure during crises while showing appropriate emotional responses to their children's achievements and challenges. This might involve concealing worry about family finances while openly celebrating a child's academic success. It could mean maintaining steady authority during disciplinary situations while showing genuine pride in a child's character development. The goal is to provide emotional safety and security while modeling appropriate emotional regulation and resilience. This approach maintains team morale and functionality while ensuring that decision-making is not compromised by widespread panic or despair. The international business context presents particularly complex challenges for the deployment of unreadability. Different cultures have vastly different expectations for emotional expression, directness, and relationship building in professional contexts. What reads as sophisticated inscrutability in one culture may be interpreted as coldness or disrespect in another. The globally minded practitioner must develop cultural intelligence to modify their approach appropriately for different contexts.
In high-context cultures where relationship building and emotional connection are prioritized in business dealings, complete inscrutability may prevent the formation of trust necessary for successful partnerships.
In low-context cultures where efficiency and directness are valued, excessive emotional revelation may be seen as unprofessional or manipulative. The skilled international professional learns to calibrate their level of openness and mystery to match cultural expectations while still maintaining strategic advantages. The digital communication age has created new challenges and opportunities for the deployment of unreadability. Email, text messages, and video conferencing remove many of the subtle cues that allow for inscrutability in face-to-face interactions. However, they also provide new opportunities for controlling information flow and maintaining strategic ambiguity through delayed responses, carefully chosen words, and selective availability. The digitally sophisticated practitioner learns to use these communication channels strategically, perhaps being immediately responsive in some contexts while maintaining deliberate delays in others. They may use formal language in certain communications while allowing more personality to show through in others. The goal is to maintain the psychological advantages of unreadability while adapting to the constraints and opportunities of digital communication platforms. As artificial intelligence and data analysis become more sophisticated, the maintenance of personal inscrutability may become both more challenging and more important. Organizations and individuals with access to advanced analytics may be able to detect patterns and predict behaviors in ways that make traditional unreadability techniques less effective. This evolution will require new approaches to maintaining privacy and strategic advantage in an increasingly transparent world. The future master of unreadability may need to understand not just human psychology but also algorithmic analysis and digital privacy protection. They may need to actively manage their digital footprints and behavioral data in addition to their face-to-face expressions and communications. This adds new layers of complexity to an already sophisticated skill set. The ethical dimensions of unreadability become more complex as the skill develops and its applications become more far-reaching. While maintaining privacy and strategic advantage can be legitimate and even necessary in competitive environments, the use of inscrutability to deceive, manipulate, or harm others raises significant moral questions. The responsible practitioner must develop clear ethical guidelines for when and how these skills are appropriately deployed. This ethical framework might include principles such as never using unreadability to exploit vulnerable individuals, maintaining honesty even while controlling information flow, and ensuring that strategic ambiguity serves legitimate purposes rather than purely selfish ones. The goal should be to gain strategic advantages while still treating others with respect and fairness. The long-term psychological effects of maintaining high levels of unreadability also deserve careful consideration. Individuals who spend significant portions of their time controlling their expressions and concealing their thoughts may begin to lose touch with their own authentic emotions and reactions. They may find it increasingly difficult to access spontaneous feelings or to form genuine connections even when they want to do so. Regular self-reflection and periods of authentic expression become essential for maintaining psychological health while developing these skills. This might involve journaling, therapy, close friendships where complete honesty is maintained, or other practices that preserve access to one's authentic emotional life. The goal is to develop the ability to be unreadable when necessary without losing the capacity for genuine human connection when it is desired. The integration of unreadability with other social and professional skills creates synergistic effects that amplify its power. When combined with active listening skills, inscrutability becomes even more effective at gathering information and understanding others' motivations. When paired with strategic thinking abilities, it enables more sophisticated long-term planning and competitive advantage. When integrated with emotional intelligence, it allows for more nuanced and effective deployment in various social contexts. The development of these complementary skills should proceed alongside the cultivation of unreadability itself. This creates a comprehensive approach to social intelligence that serves multiple purposes and provides flexibility in addressing various challenging situations and relationships. As we move toward understanding the ultimate applications and mastery of this skill, we begin to see how it transforms not just individual interactions but entire approaches to life strategy and personal development. The true master of unreadability operates from a fundamentally different relationship with information, power, and human connection than those who have not developed these capabilities. This transformed approach to life and relationships represents perhaps the most significant long-term consequence of mastering unreadability. It changes not just what the individual can accomplish in specific situations, but how they understand and navigate the entire landscape of human interaction and social influence. The ultimate mastery of unreadability transcends mere technique and becomes a fundamental orientation toward power, knowledge, and human relations. At this level, the skill has been so thoroughly integrated into the individual's personality and approach to life that it no longer requires conscious effort or deliberate deployment. Instead, it becomes a natural and automatic response to social situations that require strategic thinking or competitive advantage. This level of integration creates what might be called unconscious competence in the realm of social intelligence and strategic interaction. Just as a master musician no longer thinks consciously about finger placement or breathing technique, the master of unreadability no longer needs to remind themselves to control their expressions or monitor their information sharing. These behaviors have become so deeply ingrained that they operate automatically, freeing cognitive resources for higher-level strategic thinking and planning. The individual who reaches this level of mastery often finds that their reputation and influence extend far beyond their formal positions or explicit achievements. They become known as someone who really understands how things work or who always seems to know what's really going on. This reputation creates opportunities and access that would otherwise be unavailable, as others seek out their counsel, perspective, or participation in important endeavors. This influence operates through what sociologists call soft power, the ability to shape outcomes and influence behavior without relying on formal authority or explicit coercion. The master of unreadability accumulates soft power naturally through their inscrutability, as others begin to assume that someone who reveals so little must possess significant knowledge, insight, or capability that they are keeping private. The assumption of hidden depth or secret knowledge creates a form of psychological gravity that draws others into the unreadable person's orbit. Colleagues want to be included in their confidence, competitors want to understand their strategies, and both friends and rivals find themselves unconsciously seeking approval or validation from someone whose true opinions remain mysterious. This gravitational effect compounds over time as the unreadable individual's network expands and their reputation for inscrutability spreads. People begin talking about them in ways that enhance their mystique and assumed importance. "You never know what they're thinking, but they always seem to be 2 steps ahead" becomes a common refrain. These repeated characterizations create a feedback loop that reinforces their influence and makes their inscrutability even more psychologically powerful. The master practitioner learns to leverage this reputation strategically while being careful not to let it become a limiting factor. They understand that mystique without substance eventually becomes apparent and counterproductive. Therefore, they ensure that their inscrutability is backed by genuine competence, knowledge, and strategic thinking. They use the influence generated by their unreadability to create real value and achieve meaningful objectives rather than simply maintaining their mysterious reputation for its own sake. This integration of substance and style creates what might be called earned inscrutability, mystery that is justified by actual capability and knowledge rather than empty posturing. The individual who achieves this balance becomes genuinely formidable because their unreadability reflects real strategic thinking and competence rather than mere social manipulation. In organizational contexts, these individuals often emerge as informal leaders and decision-makers regardless of their official positions. Their colleagues begin to defer to their judgment not because of their title or formal authority, but because of the assumption that someone so controlled and mysterious must possess superior insight or information. This informal authority can be more powerful than formal authority because it is granted voluntarily and maintained through respect rather than obligation. The master of unreadability in organizational settings often becomes the person that others consult before making important decisions, even when that consultation is not formally required. They become trusted advisors whose opinions carry weight precisely because those opinions are rarely shared and never casually offered. When they do speak, others listen carefully because they have learned that such communications usually contain valuable insight or information. This selective communication creates what economists call signaling value. Their words and expressions carry enhanced meaning because of their rarity and the reputation of the source. A slight nod from someone known for inscrutability may carry more weight than enthusiastic endorsement from someone more emotionally expressive. This allows the master to influence outcomes and decisions with minimal effort while maintaining their strategic advantage through continued mystery. The international implications of mastering unreadability become particularly significant for those operating in global contexts. Different cultures interpret inscrutability differently, but most recognize and respect the kind of controlled competence that characterizes true mastery of these skills. The individual who can maintain appropriate levels of mystery while demonstrating genuine capability often finds that they can operate effectively across cultural boundaries that challenge others. This cultural adaptability stems partly from the fact that unreadability, when properly deployed, focuses attention on competence and results rather than on cultural expressions or social behaviors that might be misinterpreted across cultural lines. The master practitioner learns to let their work and their strategic thinking speak for them while using inscrutability to avoid cultural misunderstandings that might arise from more expressive approaches. In the realm of personal relationships and family life, the master of unreadability faces unique challenges and opportunities. The skills that serve them well in competitive or professional contexts must be carefully modulated in intimate relationships that require genuine emotional connection and vulnerability. However, even in these contexts, selective inscrutability can enhance rather than diminish relationship quality when applied with wisdom and emotional intelligence. The individual who has mastered these skills often finds that they can provide unusual stability and strength to their personal relationships. They are less likely to be triggered by emotional manipulation, more capable of maintaining perspective during relationship conflicts, and better able to make decisions based on long-term relationship health rather than momentary emotional impulses. This emotional stability can be particularly valuable during family crises or challenging life transitions. While others may be overwhelmed by emotion or uncertainty, the master of unreadability can provide calm leadership and steady decision-making that benefits everyone involved. Their ability to process their own emotions privately while presenting composed external leadership often makes them natural family leaders during difficult times. However, the same emotional control must be balanced with appropriate vulnerability and emotional sharing to maintain intimate connections. The most successful masters learn to create private spaces and relationships where they can be completely authentic while maintaining their strategic inscrutability in public and competitive contexts. This compartmentalization requires sophisticated emotional intelligence but allows them to enjoy both the strategic advantages of unreadability and the satisfaction of genuine human connection. The mentoring and teaching applications of mastered unreadability create interesting dynamics and opportunities. The individual who has developed these skills to an advanced level often finds themselves in positions where others seek to learn from them. However, the nature of unreadability means that their most valuable skills cannot be easily observed or directly copied by those who would learn from them. This creates opportunities for more sophisticated forms of mentoring that focus on developing the underlying capabilities: emotional control, strategic thinking, information management, and social intelligence rather than simply copying surface behaviors. The master mentor can guide others toward developing their own forms of strategic inscrutability while helping them understand the ethical and practical considerations involved in these approaches. The legacy implications of mastering unreadability extend beyond immediate personal and professional success to long-term influence and impact. Individuals who develop these skills to an advanced level often find that their influence extends well beyond their active involvement in particular organizations or projects. Their approaches, decisions, and strategic thinking continue to influence others long after direct contact has ended. This extended influence occurs partly because the mystery and respect generated by unreadability causes others to study and remember the master's approaches more carefully than they might otherwise. People spend time trying to understand and decode the strategic thinking of someone who remains mysterious to them, and this attention often leads to deeper learning and longer retention of lessons and approaches. The economic implications of mastering unreadability can be substantial, particularly in business and investment contexts where information asymmetry directly translates to financial advantage. The individual who consistently reveals less while learning more about others' positions, strategies, and intentions can make better decisions about partnerships, investments, negotiations, and competitive positioning. This informational advantage compounds over time as the master builds networks of relationships where they are consistently gathering more intelligence than they are revealing. They develop reputations as valuable partners and advisors precisely because others know they can share information without worrying about indiscreet revelation, while also benefiting from the master's insights and strategic thinking. The political applications of mastered unreadability, whether in formal political contexts or in the informal politics of organizations and communities, can provide significant advantages in building coalitions, managing conflicts, and advancing agendas. The individual who can listen to all sides without revealing their own positions can often serve as an effective mediator or broker while advancing their own interests. This political effectiveness stems from the trust that inscrutability can generate when combined with demonstrated competence and integrity. Others begin to believe that the unreadable individual is above petty politics or factional interests, making them effective leaders during times of conflict or change. Their apparent objectivity, whether real or perceived, allows them to make decisions and build consensus in ways that more obviously partisan individuals cannot. As we consider the complete development and application of these skills, we see that the true master of unreadability has transformed a defensive technique into a comprehensive approach to life that enhances effectiveness across multiple domains. They have learned to balance strategic advantage with ethical responsibility, competitive effectiveness with authentic relationships, and personal privacy with appropriate transparency. The journey to this level of mastery requires years of deliberate practice, sophisticated self-awareness, and continuous adaptation to new contexts and challenges. It involves developing not just techniques for controlling expressions and information flow, but also the strategic thinking, emotional intelligence, and ethical framework necessary to deploy these capabilities wisely and effectively. The individual who completes this journey emerges with capabilities that extend far beyond the original skill of being unreadable. They have developed a comprehensive approach to social intelligence, strategic thinking, and personal effectiveness that serves them in virtually every area of life. They understand human psychology at a deep level, can navigate complex social and political situations with skill, and maintain the kind of personal autonomy and strategic flexibility that allows them to pursue their goals effectively while maintaining their integrity and authenticity. Perhaps most importantly, they have learned that the power of being unreadable is not an end in itself, but a means to more important goals: the ability to make better decisions, build more effective relationships, achieve meaningful objectives, and contribute positively to the communities and organizations they are part of. The technique serves larger purposes rather than becoming an obsession or limitation. This perspective allows the true master to deploy their skills selectively and appropriately, using unreadability when it serves legitimate purposes while setting it aside when authentic connection and vulnerability better serve their long-term interests and values. They understand that the most powerful individuals are not those who are never readable, but those who choose consciously when and how to reveal themselves to others. The ultimate expression of mastered unreadability is the wisdom to know when not to be unreadable, when genuine transparency, vulnerability, and authentic emotional expression will better serve one's deepest purposes and most important relationships. This wisdom represents the highest level of social intelligence and emotional maturity, transforming a sophisticated technique into a component of a larger approach to living with both effectiveness and integrity. In this complete development, we see that Machiavelli's insights about the power of mystery and inscrutability remain as relevant today as they were centuries ago. However, we also see that the most sophisticated modern practitioners understand that these capabilities must be balanced with other values and objectives to create truly fulfilling and effective lives. The power of being unreadable becomes most valuable when it serves not just immediate strategic advantage, but larger purposes of creating value, building meaningful relationships, and contributing positively to the world around us. The individual who achieves this level of integration has transformed themselves into someone genuinely formidable, not because they are manipulative or deceptive, but because they have developed the emotional intelligence, strategic thinking, and social capabilities necessary to navigate complex human environments while maintaining their integrity and pursuing their most important goals. They have learned to be unreadable when it serves larger purposes, while remaining capable of authentic connection and genuine vulnerability when those approaches better serve their deepest values and most meaningful relationships. This represents the true mastery of unreadability, not as an end in itself, but as one component of a comprehensive approach to living with both strategic effectiveness and authentic meaning. The skill that initially seems to focus on concealment and control ultimately becomes a pathway to greater freedom, more meaningful relationships, and more effective contribution to the world around us.